That's great. And with it seems like an early spring, I think we're all thinking. Yeah, go right ahead. We're all thinking ahead, and it's easier to think ahead now than ever because we don't have a blizzard, at least yet. So at least while we're thinking about gardening, let's dive in and learn some things. And the goal of today is to give you kind of an overview of what it takes to garden in a way that you can feed your family. So the things you'll learn today might not be the most technical or the most coolest thing you'll find on the internet, but they've been proven and they work in North Dakota. So the goal today is to give you some actionable things that you can take away that will apply to North Dakota seasons especially. So as we all know, ice storms in Texas or coronavirus can, and as a result, it is helpful for all of us to look at how can we build our home economy, like how can we become a little bit more self-sufficient or diversify where we rely on for our food. So I'm excited that you're all here, and I just wanted to introduce our speaker and our guest, Lisa Geiger, and she's from Baldwin, North Dakota, so that's about 45 minutes north, and she is a homeschool mom and mother of 11 who has been gardening for who knows how long.
Who knows how long? At least 35 years.
My wife, Nicole, relies on Lisa's advice for all kinds of things, from when to plant and what to plant and which seed companies work best and all those kinds of things. So Lisa's going to give us kind of an overview. We want to cover a few things related to planning your garden. I do have some graph paper, and if you're the type that would like to do some hands-on or pencil on the paper, I'll give a copy out to anybody who wants a graph paper. We like to kind of outline where we're going to put stuff as we think about it, so if you want that, pass that around. So planning, kind of during this time frame especially, we want to prepare kind of mentally, what are we going to do? A lot of times you have to start with the end in mind. So the handout that most of you got, if you haven't gotten already, it's a little guide to how many plants of each type should you plant per person. So a lot of us can go into a seed catalog and want to order everything that you see, and the problem is if you plant 15 zucchini plants, you're going to have it coming out your ears, and if you don't have pigs or chickens, it's going to go to waste. So understanding the end goal and how much to plant is what that's for. A few of our sponsors for the class today is the co-op, who donated the use of the room, the community room, to host us here. We're appreciative of that. And then the Weston Price Foundation chapter. The little red brochure that you got is the organization dedicated to restoring kind of an understanding of the traditions that created civilizations for centuries that have been forgotten in our modern technological age. So Nicole and I are chapter leaders for North Dakota, and that's what we put these events on for, is to try to help share information, kind of get the ball rolling and get people thinking about those things. And then my family's farm, Bartlett Farms, is also a host of this event, and we do grass-fed and pastured products and deliver fresh raw milk around North Dakota. So there's some information and flyers if you're interested in that on the table. Oh, right. Yeah, and then another sponsor would be Faulkner's Market in Mandan. Is a family-owned greenhouse and plant supplier. So actually, as a special for today, they're going to open their store early. They're usually open April 1st, but they're going to open for an hour from 3 to 4 p.m. today. So if you get inspired and you want to get a head start on something that you don't want to wait 3 to 4 weeks to order, because a lot of seed companies are behind, then you can head over to Mandan, and Faulkner's Market is where to go for that. So they gave us some seeds. We'll do a bit of hands-on after the class, and then you're free to go check them out if you are so led. So some graph paper, I'll just pass the bunch around if you want to take some. Pass it on. And that,
okay.
Lisa.
Just a little add-on to Faulkner. So they're open today, and they're on the Strip. if you go to McDonald's on the Strip, and then it's a little bit further on the left if you haven't ever been there before. And so they're not going to have everything available today, but if you want to, especially if you want to get your seeds started, if you need to have trays and some soil, they have that there. They don't have their credit card set up for today, so you will need cash or check. So just so you know, from 3 to 4 they will be open today. All right, well, I appreciate Peter saying, like, I'm not very smart. It's not what he said, and it's true. I don't, the technical things are not my thing. So what I'm really giving you is my experience with gardening in North Dakota, and I have lived in North Dakota my whole life, and so I grew up gardening. And then when I started having a family, I just thought gardening is what everybody did, so I gardened. And then I really started learning a lot more, because sometimes you can garden by accident and sometimes you can garden on purpose, and it's a little better to do it on purpose. So I'm going to be telling you some things about the on purpose side today. I would like to know how many of you have gardened. Okay, how many of you haven't ever gardened? Okay, just a few. And how many of you gardened last year? Okay, at least half. So how many of you how many of you don't have a garden plot started that want to garden? 1, 2, 3. Okay, are you guys together? Okay. Okay. Do you have an area that is full sunshine, folks? Full sunshine for a garden. Nothing shaded. You will have slugs. You just will have problems. You've got to, everything you plant should be in full sunshine. So, okay, so that's something to think about for those of you that don't have a plot started. Those of you that, raise your hands again, that want to start, that haven't gardened before. Have any of you tilled your soil yet? Have you broken soil or anything? No. Okay, so do you all have sod? Do you have grass right now where it's growing? Okay, so the one thing I would start off with by saying, first of all, the best thing to do, and it's just something to think about, especially if you're going to expand your garden, but the best thing to do is to till your soil okay. Now, I tilled for years. About 4 years ago, I switched to a no-till system. But I will tell you that tilling works. You just lose some of your worm population. It's not best for all the microbes that are in there, because as we till, we just disrupt, the natural thing that God designed when He gave us the gardens. He started off with a garden. Okay, Adam and Eve were in the garden, so gardening is very biblical. And even on that point, I find gardening to be like, it feeds my soul. It feeds my body, but it feeds my soul. And so I'm a Bible-believing Christian. So the Bible talks about that God created the earth, okay? And then what do our gardens need to grow besides the earth? Sunshine and water in particular. And so Jesus Himself is called the Son of God. I mean, there's just so many parallels to gardening. So I find gardening to be just incredibly fulfilling in so many ways. And then Jesus calls Himself the living water. And so I think it's just neat that so many of the biblical principles really apply, gardening. And as I go through, I'm out there and I'm thinking, okay, now these weeds, they're really a pain. And they're kind of like sin in your life, If you get them early, if you get them when they're little, they're not a big deal. But if you let these weeds get like this and they have a root system like this, it's a nightmare. So I find gardening to be just great in so many realms. Back to my thought process on if you're starting and you have grass. So first of all, if you have grass, it's telling you that soil has a lot of what it needs to grow things, okay? So the first thing, if you're going to, first of all, you can go online and just research a little bit, but I would mow. Well, right now you don't have to mow, so if you're starting right now, you're good. You're going to have to go and you're going to have to get down a foot. Whether you use a tiller or whether you decide to do it with a shovel, you're going to have a foot down for proper root growth and for just your soil to be aerated and everything. So to start off, you either are going to till it like till it and then let it set for 3 or 4 days, and then till it a different direction and let it set again. And the same thing applies with a shovel if you're doing it for right now. Now, it's a huge project if you're doing it now and you're going to plant this year, because you're going to end up with more weeds, with more grass roots trying to come up. But I would still do it. I would still do it, and think, and whatever you're going to do, make it manageable, so that whatever you do this year, is you learn from what you did this year, and then you can always expand. I've expanded to a 10,000 square foot garden, but I didn't start off with a 10,000 square foot garden. I just expanded, year by year. And so, so you need to get, you can turn that grass over and let the roots be exposed so that the sun will start breaking it down. If you do it in the wintertime, and if you do it in the fall, then our winters, the cold and the snow and the elements will really break it down for you. So ideally, if you're going to want to increase your garden for next year, and you're starting this year, just be sure that you do till it in the fall, or with a spade, turn it over, just one or the other. So you could get your soil just started, just right there. You could plant. However, I really would highly recommend that you do add some manure to it, composted manure. You can get that at any, anybody at any, you can get it at Faulkner's, you can get it at, like a Menards, Lowe's, any of those kind of stores. Sheep manure is really good, cow manure is good. If you have access to some farmers that have composted manure, not fresh, composted, that would be great. You shouldn't really use horse manure, because horses are not ruminants, and so there's so many more weed seeds that will come up from that. So I don't encourage you to use horse manure. But if you're just starting out, let's say you just did a 100 square feet, a 10 by 10 area. Now, I wouldn't necessarily do 10 by 10. I mean, you can, but it's going to be more profitable if you do about like a 4 by 25 foot area. You have the same square footage, but because, if you do 10 by 10, you have to have room to be able to get in between the rows. So you lose some of your, your plantable space, just because you have to have you have to at least be able to walk. You don't have to be able to till, because you can't, as long as you can get in there. But like I used to always till between my rows, I don't do that anymore. So now I plant my rows much closer than what I used to. I just leave a walk space, and then I do try to, I use mulch, okay, and we'll get to that. But I try to leave walk space so that what I'm walking on is never where I'm planting. Because as you compact the soil, well, see, here's where I don't know all the technical things, but I know it's not good for your soil to have it compacted. Again, you decrease how deep your roots can go. You can hurt your worm population. Your water isn't as easily absorbed into a compacted soil. So compacting your soil is something you want to try not to do. So try in any of your gardens to always have a walk space separate from where you're planting. Now, in my garden, I've gotten to the point, and for me, it's been extremely profitable, but because I have a huge garden. But so I use I have a tape system with an underlying water tape system, and Jordan Seeds they're close to Minneapolis. If any of you have a garden big enough and it's worth investing in that, and what it is I put mine is actually permanent because now I'm not tilling, so I put permanent water lines that I bury underneath all of my rows, and then at the end of the row is a header that hooks up to a hose, so I can water my entire garden. I just turn it on, I water it for 4 hours. There's no overflow, there's no spraying that goes on anywhere, unless somebody put a hole in my lines, which happens. And so you're using the minimal amount of water. It's getting right to the root source, and it's so convenient, because I used to go out and move a sprinkler every half hour, and you can do that. And so I just encourage you, if you're starting out and you just want to get started, just start, but make it manageable. Okay, so the things you need are, I definitely would say, is to put the fertilizer in your soil. The other thing that where did I write that down at? Oh, I wonder if I wrote it down. I think I wrote it somewhere. Oh, it's going to be in here. Oh, this is okay, so Johnny's Seeds is where I do order a lot of my seeds from, but you don't necessarily have to order from them, but I will tell you they're an incredible source of information on all different products. So go to johnnyseeds.com, and it's just one S, JOHNNYS, and then Eads. It's not Johnny's and then Seeds. So, and when you go on any product that they have in there, if you go under the what's it called? I think it's just, well, I don't know. You're gonna have to check where to click on it. I want to say product description, but it's not product description. It's something, I don't know, growing information or something like that. And what they have in there is they always have an explanation of, like, here's peppers, okay? And they give you a whole column. So I usually cut out, if I'm ordering from them or whatever I'm ordering, just to write it in a notebook so I have records from year to year so I know what I've done. But I cut it out, put it on a page, and cut out these instructions, because these instructions here are very valuable, because they tell you virtually on all pepper seeds, whether it's jalapeno peppers, whether it's, bell peppers, whether it's a little lunchbox peppers, they all grow. You're going to plant them the same depth. You're going to plant the plants the same distance apart. And this, like on peppers, will give you an explanation of something that I do to increase your the amount of fruit that you're going to get. It tells you how to put them after a certain point when you have a certain number of leaves on them, how to put them in a colder area at night for like 4 weeks. I actually do that. So I take them down to a little root cellar in my basement, put them there at night, and then bring them out during the day. So anyway, but it just gives you information on every single product, and when to, well, I don't know if this one says when, yeah, it does. It says when to plant them. And if you're growing your plants, if you're starting your plants indoors, it'll tell you the temperature to start your plants on. So I highly encourage you, to educate yourself on what you're planting. And pick out the things that are the most important to you. I'm going to give you this little handout that you can look at. The first page of this talks about in the Bismarck area, and it's pretty much the surrounding area. Now, if you go up to Botanout, we're in zone 4. You guys are zone 3 something, right? Maybe 3B or 3A, I don't know. And so their growing season actually isn't as long as our growing season. So the really important thing to know for some things that you're planting, and it's really important, especially if you're starting your own plants, like I start my own peppers and celery and flowers and tomatoes. That's all I start. I don't do anything else. And lettuce. But if you put your plants out too early and they freeze, especially tomatoes, peppers, that will give you no mercy. No mercy. I mean, there just went months of effort. So it's really important that you know the last frost date, and then you watch the forecast. I never plant just on May 15th, because that is our average last frost date in Bismarck, but I never just assume I'm going to put my plants out on May 15th, because sometimes it needs to be May 28th. I always watch the forecast. And if you would plant and you're going to dip down even close to 33, because these things can't even handle 33, most of them, figure out a way that you're going to get some blankets out there and cover these tiny little plants, or like some 5-gallon buckets. You could put 5-gallon buckets over them and then cover that with a blanket. But you have to be attentive to things like that, okay, in the climates that we live in. So this is when to plant in Bismarck, and I separate it into different categories of different things that, like these are the starts that when you start if you're starting plants inside. This is things that can, anyway, it'll be self-explanatory, but just, it gives you kind of an idea what can be planted when. Go. Yeah, you can. And then I have the next one is just really kind of my notes on different things that I plant in my garden. And I'll go through a little bit of that in a little bit. And then the companion planting guide. So when she gave you the little grid there to put your plants on, it's very, I'm going to keep one of these. And some of them got, so I have a 12-year-old with Down syndrome. Well, he was helping collate these, so just smile when the pages aren't quite in order and the staple's on the wrong side. Yeah. Oopsie. Thank you. You don't even have Down syndrome. Oh dear. Okay, so right now, at home, I have started my pepper plants, my celery plants, and that's all for now. But, so look at here, you'll see some of the early things. Now, garlic is one of those things, and when you go on the second page, the considerations of individual vegetables, I have that listed in there. But garlic is one of those things that you can plant in the fall. It's the only thing I know of that you can plant in the fall. And go ahead, what did you need? Just need, okay. Okay.
Question.
Yes.
My daughter is wanting to start a garden here in town. In Beulah. I live in Beulah.
Okay.
She lives in, anyhow, she wants to do a raised garden
Okay.
over the top of lawn grass.
Yeah.
You were saying, okay, till the grass.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough with a tiller. I mean, you really have to work on it.
You do. Like the first time you till it, you'll just barely get it 2 to 3 inches in.
Yeah.
And then that's why I say, and then you leave it a little bit, and then in another week, and water it. And in another week, if you, or a few, 4 or 5 days, you come back, and you can till it. You'll be able to till it deeper. Okay. And you can keep doing that if you have access to a tiller. But that's why I'm saying start small if you don't, and use your spade. And so here's the one thing I haven't done raised gardens. Okay. Although one year I did try just just raising them, not really doing a bunch of soil amendments, but I just tried like hilling it up and working that way. I realized my soil where I live is very sandy, and so to have a raised garden was a stupid thing for me to do because I couldn't keep enough water up in there. And so it was just a mess. And I only, thankfully, and this is a good thing to do, if you're going to try something new, just try it on a really small part of something. And so for me, that didn't work. Now I have a sister that followed the book. This is like about 4 years ago. She was building all these raised beds, and she put in all, she went and bought soil because they have really poor soil where they're at in Montana. She put in the manure, she put in everything. Well, whatever she did, even though she says she went by the book, it was way too rich or something. Nothing would grow in it. Everything turned yellow, and it was just, and so she's on like the 3rd year now, and I think last year she finally got a few things to grow. But that's why I say, if something's already growing in that soil, feel free to add amendments to it. But if it was me, I would honestly, but I just don't have experience with raised beds either. But I would rather work with the soil that's there and add some amendments to it and have a few weeds the first year than put all that money and time and effort into something that I don't know enough. See, that's where he said, that's this part that I don't know enough about, the technical part of it. I don't know how to figure out what I would do right or wrong there. What was your question?
I have a raised garden that my husband made, and he stained it and everything, and I did okay with the vegetables. But as I watered it, I noticed the stain was dripping on, and I'm wondering how contaminated my soil is. And I put like $100 worth of soil in there. And I did harvest the stuff out of it, but it made me nervous. And this year
so your topsoil is going to have stuff that isn't going into it. I mean, the more top stuff I would say is going to be your safer soil. But like I don't use tires in my garden ever. Be sure you don't use any treated like railroad ties that has the creosote on it. I mean, those are all carcinogens. So be cautious about what you use. Research it before you do it.
Treated weed barrier. I mean, if you're going to put weed barrier
oh dear.
down.
So no, I not if it's treated. I don't.
No, but regular weed barrier.
Oh yeah. I would use it, but I wouldn't. But when you said treated, okay.
I think people make mistakes by burning too much manure on there, or putting something down. Yep. And the other thing, if you haven't researched composting, I highly encourage you to, if you can, I live in the country, so I don't know how it works in town for sure, but if you can start a compost pile, well, I mean, I know there's barrels and stuff you can get, because anytime you compost all your grass clippings that don't have anything on them, okay, all your plants at the end of the year, all your vegetable, peels, whatever, any organic matter that you're using, if you compost it, that compost is like the perfect environment to plant anything in. You pretty much don't have to worry about
about anything if it's composted. And you know, when you're composting, like I said, I'm not going to really go into that today, but you know, it has to be a taller thing. You can't compost and have it spread out because it really has to heat up. And you know, anyway, read up about it. But compost is wonderful because a lot of it is just stuff you'd throw away anyway. Go ahead.
I've never done a garden, but I've planted plenty of grass in my day.
Yeah.
Had really good luck with compost dirt out at the landfill.
Oh.
$3 for a pickup load.
Oh.
And just go out there and help yourself. So little tip. I don't know if anybody else would want to do it.
Yes, that, yeah.
Kind of till that in.
Mm-hmm.
A question I have is if a guy starts a garden that way, and then going forward, you wouldn't really need to till anymore, right?
You don't need to. So one thing I did for years, and I would like to figure out how to actually continue to do this now that I do no-till, but at the end of the year, when you have all the leaves that people have gathered from their yards on, you know, leaves are everywhere. Now leaves are not typically heavily sprayed, so I take leaves, but I used to take leaves and, you know, put them about 1.5 feet, well, for sure 1 foot deep in my garden. And if I was tilling in the fall, then I would till them in at like the last thing before it would freeze, because leaves give so much just good organic material and what's the right word when it like makes it more porous and more, anyway, leaves for me,
Like, leaves are fungal versus like a forest is more fungal, more moss grows in the woods. Grass clippings is more microbial, where there's more microbiology going on. Like, so worms would live better in like micro soil, and basically forest soil is better for growing shady forest type stuff. So like grass clippings is probably better for gardens.
Okay, so if you could actually till them in.
Oh, like peat moss?
It's
No,
the
just leaves.
like
Yeah, hummus.
hummus, like not hum. It's not. Is hummus the right word? Humus. Humus.
Okay.
What did you call it?
Lomus soil.
Or loamy? Yeah, like a loamy. Yeah. So anytime you can, you know, anytime you can put anything into your soil. So for years I did leaves, and I mean my worm population is unbelievable, and well, I don't know. I don't do, like, I never test my soil and stuff. I mean, obviously, if you have problems, I would definitely get it tested. If you know, find the resources. I know the county extension agent is who I count. Yeah. If you have questions about certain things, like, or I call them, like, if I get a really, like, a blight on something of mine or a bug that I don't know that's eating something, and see if they can help me there. What was your question back there?
One more question. Can you start just right off the bat? Like, we're looking at buying a couple acres, and it is, like you said, it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Where you're just jarring your frame, tilling that first couple inches, and then to get it down even farther, it's a lot of work. If you want to do a couple large gardens, which I want to do, is there a way to do it with no-till right off the bat? Like, you can lay cardboard down, till the grass, bring in your amendments, and then somehow those roots would eventually find their way down.
Yeah, you can do that. I have never done it. I mean, I have read some people that's what they do. They do the cardboard. Now, if you're doing cardboard, be sure you take off all the tape, because that's stuff that I wouldn't want in my garden. Yeah, and then put your amendments over it, and it will just break down. I've done that to control weeds before, is just put cardboard and then, you know, stuff on top of it for an area that I'm not going to use for a while. So I know that would work. I'm just not sure about planting in it this year, though. I don't know, because, I mean, I don't know. I mean, depending on how much amendment you have on the top of it, because you got to have they got to be able to get through the roots, and I don't think they're going to go through the cardboard right away. I don't know, but also,
if you're going to do it a year in advance, you could do maybe something like that.
Yeah, that you could definitely do, and and then be sure that it gets some moisture, especially as dry as we are. But that's the other thing with tilling. If you just water just that area, that will help you with your tilling, because otherwise it's just like trying to till cement, sometimes. So, okay, so where else was I going to go with some of this? I know I want to be a little more fundamental. Some things I know I've gotten a little bit. So preparing your soil, making sure you have, obviously having your water source. I'm going to talk a little bit about just a couple things. Broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale. in North Dakota, I don't know about other states, but in North Dakota we have these lovely, beautiful little white butterflies that have little green worms, you know, as their larvae, and they will eat. I think it's impossible to garden without them attacking all the brassicas, okay? So the thing that I have, to me it's like so worth it. So what I have done, and I have this, this is a little bit bent out of shape because it's been used many, many times. But I have this hoop bender, and all this is 1/2 inch electrical conduit that you can buy for like $4 for a 10-foot thing. This is a 10-foot, whatever it's called. Anyway, I have this hoop bender, and I would be more than happy if you drive out to my house in Baldwin, and it's only about 22 minutes, not 45. He maybe drives slower than I do, I don't know. Anyway, but these things I use for my brassicas, and I also use them for my pepper plants, and I'm going to tell you why. So we bend these, and I just push them right into the ground about 6 to 7 inches. You just take them and just push them in, and then if I'm doing a huge row, so this is how I do my peppers especially. Like I'll do a 50-foot row of this. And so about every 8 feet, I'll push another one in and another one in, and then you have this. Now this isn't the right size to go over this hoop, but this is called Agribon, and Johnny Seeds carries it, and also Jordan Seeds carries another one called, I think I wrote it in there somewhere, called Pro 19. Jordan Seeds out of Minneapolis, and I get the 10-foot. I get the 10-foot one, so which makes sense because if this is a 10-foot piece of conduit, but you're pushing it in the ground, then what you have left on the sides is about 6 inches. And so I put these in the ground. I used to use these clips because of our North Dakota wind to clip my Agribon on it, but I don't do it because they tend to tear. And so what I've learned is that if you go about every 8 feet, and you could do it closer, especially if you're only doing well, I mean, you have to have 3 of them, pretty much. You should have 3 of them. So you push it in, but then I'll bury those sides. What did I do? Oh, thanks. I am tangled. I just take a shovel along the sides of it, and I just bury all my fabric, and then there isn't a bunch of flapping because it's a firm. You have it firmly over your tunnels, and then one of the best things though is to take a rope and go through it and just a very small rope or heavy string, and loop around it and go through and loop around it and go through it, and then when you get to the end, stake them down. It just creates a very stable unit for you. But if you put that on, so this Agribon, it lets through about 85% of the sun. All the rain goes right through it, and the wonderful thing is that those beautiful little butterflies cannot get into it, as long as you keep your ends covered. Like I just tuck at the end I'll leave 4 or 5 feet, and then I just tuck it in and put big rocks on it, and they don't get through there. And but if you get a hole in it, you have got to repair your hole. Like you got to take a piece of it and go and actually sew around it or something, because if you get a hole, they'll find the hole eventually and they will get in. And the one drawback about having this over your plants is that you can't see what's going on with your plants. So I crawl in the tunnels. I mean, it's kind of a nice place to take a nap, actually. But you crawl around in those tunnels and make sure that there's no holes and make sure that there's no butterflies or any worms or anything. But I mean, you'll know if there's a hole in it. Now, I have underground watering. So my lines are, hooked up underneath those, so I don't have to worry about watering them. But that's another thing to consider, is if you don't have you could put soaker hoses in. But if not, you will have to be able to get in there to water them. So just consider that. But you will never have to use any chemical, anything, to grow those things. So then the other thing I put in are all my peppers, because peppers are such a heat-loving plant, and because our season is so short here. So I put my peppers, I get 2 rows of peppers in this. And I plant my pepper plants, about 13, 14 inches on either side, just so I have this much, space to crawl through in the middle. And it just gives you so much extra heat. And the one peppers that I really like to grow are these Carmen peppers. They're the long red ones. I found that if I don't put the row covers over them, I lose at least a third of my peppers to sun scald, because there just isn't enough foliage on some of those plants. Now, some of them it's okay, and so it's like you go through all that work and then you lose them. So and I think I wrote that in on what I do on the peppers and those brassicas. Yep.
Chickens out?
Well, so here's the deal. If you have chickens, because I have chickens too, but if you have chickens, they'll eat everything in your garden. So this is what I do to keep my chickens out. I take my fence post, I put a fence post in, and I get we used to just do the like the green and orange snow fence, but it's not exactly beautiful, but if you don't really care. But the last thing that my boys did for me is, it's some kind of wire, and I don't know what it is, but it's about this tall. And what's the wire? It's smaller at the bottom, and then it gets a little bit wider. Nicole, do you have some water? I forgot to bring my water in. For some reason I have a tickle. Okay.
Like roll fencing.
Yeah, and they just do zip ties on it, and that keeps the chickens out. But I also have guineas, and so the other issue is that you have to sometimes clip their wings, and here's the thing: if you don't ever let them in, they won't try to get in. But if they're used to getting in, they're gonna battle you. But clip their wings, so they can't, because they will fly over your fence. But so we have a little gate which sometimes gets left open, and it's just like, that's a big thing my kids get in trouble for. Don't you leave that gate open. God only knows what those chickens are going to do in our garden, because they will just go and destroy.
And they're great in the fall after after the plants are bigger, but when they're little, that's when I want to protect them.
Oh yeah. I never let chickens in my, never. Now if you had a chicken tractor and you wanted to, be fertilizing them, I know people that do that, but yeah. No. Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple of the specific plants just to tell you a few things. So the other thing I do is I do mulch, and so right now in my garden I have, because it's no-till, so I have wood chips. Thank you so much. I have wood chips throughout all my garden. But the thing about North Dakota is that you have wood chips. You have them 3 or 4 inches deep. If I don't get out like right now and get them away from my actual rows where I'm going to be planting, it takes so long for your ground to thaw out. So if you're going to be using heavy mulch or like a no-till system like me, you have to be sure that you're getting out and that the soil, you're seeing soil. I would go a foot, for sure a foot. Get all those wood chips back, that's just what I've been using for mulch. However, right against the plants, I do prefer to use grass clippings. I just don't always have enough because my garden is so large. I just don't always have enough grass clippings to use. But if I did, grass clippings would definitely be my mulch of choice. When you do mulch, you never ever mulch like right up against a plant. You always give them, a good 4 to 6 inches. You don't want it right on the plant. But the mulch is going to keep some moisture in. It's going to, the number one thing is that you aren't going to have to weed as much. I usually just weed everything really well the first time, and honestly, if I have enough mulch, that is all I weed in my whole garden. You can imagine a garden as big as I have. I have 11 kids, but I don't have that many home anymore that can help me. So mulch is the answer to easy gardening. So I encourage you, find a good source of grass clippings in particular. Okay, so going through these, so the only thing I don't use grass clippings on are green beans, unless you really enjoy, when you're harvesting them, picking off every blade of grass from your green beans, because they have that little sticky texture. So that's the only thing I absolutely won't put grass clippings around my green beans. So this considerations on individual vegetables, it just is telling you, hopefully I got it in, hopefully I didn't miss ones, but if I did, you can always look them up. But like how deep you typically plant stuff, how far apart, and then what your rows need to be. Now my rows, I just have rows just enough to walk on, that's it. So that, then you can decrease your garden space, which is a good thing. I told you about, the third one down, I told you about the broccoli and cauliflower and using those hoops. The carrots. People love to grow carrots, right? Many people, and then they store. I still have carrots from last year. As long as you bag them, I just use grocery bags. I just double bag them in grocery bags and just tie them with, so they have a little opening at the top, and stick them in a refrigerator. They will store virtually the entire winter. So carrots are a wonderful thing to grow. But most people have a major time getting them to emerge. You get a crust on the top, and it's very hard to, they just don't come through sometimes. So I did tell you, this was an old, actually the lady that used to own Faulkner's, she's the one that helped me with this. And ever since I've done plant my carrots like this, you'll see exactly what I do, and I do put the grass clippings on top of it. And as long as you keep it watered, your carrots will come through, as long as your seed will sprout. And Peter will tell you how to do that in a little bit. What did you need, sir?
Well, I found out my brother gardens too, and well, he did. Now he moved into no garden area. But anyhow, he taught me the trick in the carrots. You plant them shallow, cover them with dirt, and then take planks and put them over the top.
Oh, that might work too.
And you water it.
That's what I do.
Okay. You put a plank on them?
Yep.
I've never done that,
Once they
but
start coming,
yeah, then you have to get it
then you
off.
take 'em off.
Yep. I can see where that would help.
It worked really well last year. It was the first year I tried that,
Okay.
and they sprouted
Okay.
really quickly.
So here's the thing when I plant my carrots. So that, I mean, you guys can, I've never tried that, but it makes sense to me that would work. So I use the grass clippings because then you also have some weed protection there, because the grass clippings stay in there, so that's kind of nice. But I never, ever, ever, ever anymore plant carrots like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like you have to weed all around them anyway. So why don't you plant your carrots? Take this whole table and plant it in carrots, because see, now you can weed from this side, and you can kneel over there and you can weed from that side. And so when I do plant my carrots, I'm really careful to space them, because it does take a bit of time if you have to go thin them. If you don't thin them, you'll just get, less than pencil-sized carrots. So if you want them to grow, imagine how big you want them to be, and like I like my carrots like this. So I don't plant, that's how close I plant them. At least giving them an inch in all directions. And of course, carrot seeds, they're not the tiniest seed, but they're not totally simple to just, place. But try to place them. It's worth taking the time when you first do it. So I will plant, I'll plant this, and I'll plant half of it from this direction, and then I'll go over there and plant half of it from that direction, and just drop your seeds. But make sure that and I put that in there for carrots, because the seeds are tiny and they don't need much. They're such a shallow planted vegetable that you can't have big clumps in your soil. It really needs to be very fine soil that's really tilled well in that area, or they're not gonna come up. So that's my trick on carrots, is you read that, and then you really do have to keep that ground moist. Whereas that plank, that would really keep it moist, but you have to keep it moist, or you're not going to get them to come up. And it doesn't take them that long, especially if, now you're going to notice in here, some of them I put soil temperatures. If not, if you look in here, it'll tell you the best temperature to check your soil. And I just take, at Walmart or Sam's has those little food temperature thermometers. That's all I use. There's probably a way to do it differently, but that's all I use. And I just go in, usually I don't go in more than 2 inches, because nothing is really going to go below 2 inches. And I watch my soil temperature. If it's within, like if it says that you shouldn't plant below 60 degrees, if it's 58 or 59, I'll plant. Unless, now I do watch the forecast, because if all of a sudden you're going to have rain, which, I wish we did, but if you're going to have rain for 3 days and your temperatures are going to drop in the 50s, that will be a problem for some things. So just watch your forecast.
Lisa,
Yes.
on carrots,
Yes.
I accidentally bought pelleted
Oh.
last year from Johnny's.
Oh.
It was great.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, because my carrots were in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So pelleted is like they have a coating on it, so you
Yep.
can pick it up easier.
Yep.
It just has like a white little pellet.
Yep.
I don't know if you always have to soak them or anything.
No. No, I don't think so.
I didn't.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Yep. Anyways,
Yeah.
So I'm sure. I mean, obviously it's going to cost more if you're
Yeah.
planting a ton.
Yep.
Whatever, but I just accidentally got one pack and I
just as easy.
Yeah, pelleted is nice. That's true. Okay, celery. I didn't used to know you could grow celery. I love growing celery, and for some of you that are, if you're more in the healthy end of it, you also have the root of it, which is very, just very nutritious. So celery is, but you need to plant it, like, you have to start them by now, pretty much. I don't know if they can get celery plants. Do you guys grow celery plants? Yes. So this is Hannah from Faulkner's, and so she can tell you what they have there. But they won't. Your father-in-law?
Father-in-law.
Oh, yep. Yes. So the thing on celery that you have to really watch out is, and this will tell you that, is watch your forecast. It's the very last thing to go in the garden. It cannot handle, if you have 10 days in a row that are 55 degrees or lower, they will start to, what do they do? When they start shooting out and not just growing, bolt. Thank you, bolt. Yeah, they'll start to bolt. So I never plant them till in June. Corn, read up on your corns, because some of them that are like a super sweet variety in particular, you have to either plant them like, half a mile in between successive plantings, or you have to give them like a 10 to 15 day, it'll tell you specifically, window before you can plant the second ones because of pollinating issues. Now, something I didn't write on the corn that you should know is corn always needs 4 rows in order to pollinate correctly. So be attentive to that. You can't, if you just plant just 1 row of corn, you aren't going to have good pollination. So it's not going to do as well. You need 4 rows to pollinate correctly. And the other thing to think about when you're planting your garden is, especially where your best warm southern sun is, I never plant my corn and then like put my, I don't know what, carrots maybe there right next to it without giving it some space. Because think about how tall your corn's going to get, and it's going to be a shade. So always think about, what you're planting, especially on the north side of it, so that, although like lettuce, you could probably do it. You could put your lettuce there because lettuce can handle that shade, but not like your carrots that are going to be a longer season vegetable. All right, now cucumbers. These are the vine plants: cucumbers, watermelon, cantaloupe, squash. And people might disagree with me, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just telling you my experience. I've done tests on my own, where I'll start those seeds, because all of those vine seeds, first of all, they have to have very warm soil to plant them, and all of those pretty much all of them have very fragile root systems. So if you start them in a little pot and you transplant them, there will be some transplant shock. Okay. So what I've done is this where I start them, and then at the same time I'm starting them, right next to them, I'll put my direct seed, I'll just put my seed in to see which does better. I've never had it where my direct seeding isn't the best. So it's like I just quit ever trying to do the transplants. Maybe there's something I don't know about it that I don't know. But I know you have to be extremely careful with the root system of those. They just can't handle much. So all of those vine plants need warm soil. Go ahead.
So how our garden's set up, we don't have a ton of room.
Mm-hmm.
We were thinking about having our cucumbers vine up on a little shed we have close.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I do for my cucumbers, especially, now I don't do it for my pickling cucumbers. I don't know, just because they don't seem to, for some reason they don't, maybe I don't know. I just don't do it for them. But for anything that is a slicer that, is going to be nice and big and hanging, I take cattle panels, and I put a T-post here and a T-post here, and then the cattle panels, they're like, they have spaces in them like this. They're the real firm wire, and they're, I don't know, what are they, 12 feet? 16 feet. So I'll put my cattle panel there, zip tie them to the end, and then it makes a big arch over to the other side. And then you put your 2 T-posts over there and put your zip ties on, and then I only plant, I just plant right there, right at the base. Put everything in before you plant, because otherwise you don't know what you're stepping on, what you're doing. And then plant right there, thinking about the sun. So sometimes you might want to plant them so that it's not planted this direction, north and south, but you're planting them east and west. And then you have these arches, and by the end of the year, mine completely fills in and they meet up at the top. And the only thing you have to do is you do have to go and weave the, weave the ends in as they're growing carefully, and I always break some of them. It's just the way it is. But you don't have to zip time or anything. You just have to weave them through the hoops so that the wind, so they're not flopping and so they don't fall down. But that is a great way to save space. And the other thing you can do with that is you can plant your lettuce underneath it you can plant your lettuce underneath it, because lettuce can handle the cool, it doesn't do well in really hot soil, first of all. It won't even germinate in hot soil, and I put that in there too. But if you plant your lettuce plants underneath there, it's enough sun for them, that works out well.
So just to clarify, you're saying that you put your, cucumbers, for example,
Yep.
I have historically had trouble with that because obviously I'm planting it too early. You put in just the seed in at what date, or it's more about
It's a soil temperature.
Soil temperature.
So did I put it on there? Did I put on the, I might not have put it on there, but usually it's 70 degrees.
Okay.
Oh yeah, direct seed soil temperature,
seed has
70.
as much success with your season than transplants, is what you're saying?
I,
That's awesome.
That's what I find.
Great.
Have you not, I think I learned it from my mother, to soak those seeds?
I don't. I know some
And-
people
and
do.
water.
It probably is a really good idea, because it's just giving them it's just kind of giving them a little head start.
Yeah, I soak them for an hour or two.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be afraid to do that at all.
Because they're big enough, like
Yeah.
plant, they'll be wet. You can't do it with carrot seeds or something.
And many times when I am planting, just that little area, again, conserve your water. And I have a well, so I don't even have to conserve it, but it still is a good idea. But in town, I know you guys pay tons for water, whoever's in town. I guess I don't even know where you all live, but wet your soil. And like with the carrots too, be sure your soil is damp, because there's no seed that's going to sprout in dry soil. So be sure that just wet that area and then plant. Plus, when you do that, and if you put dry dirt above it, you can really just compact it down with your hands. Virtually everything I plant, I will do a hand compact, because with our wind, I don't know, it needs to have contact with wet soil in order to germinate. So. Okay, let me just see if there's any other little hints I want to do. Lettuce. I used to plant lettuce. I used to scatter my seed, but again, it's such small seed, and they need to be 8 to 12 inches apart. I always start my lettuce inside, and I don't actually start it in individual pots. I'll just start it, in the trays. And lettuce just needs room temperature. So I put them in the trays. Make sure that whenever you're using trays to start your plants, that you cover them so you don't lose so much moisture. But I'll just let them grow like 2 or 3 weeks, and then I'll just take a spoon and the roots, when you put them in there, the roots will kind of they'll get enmeshed a little bit, but it's okay. Just take them, spoon it out, separate them if there's 2 of them together, and just plant them. And whenever you plant, you have to know, whenever you transplant, you always make little holes, however far you're transplanting, down. And most everything should be planted at the same level that the dirt was at, except tomatoes. Okay, tomatoes you can strip off you could plant tomatoes, like if you had to plant this big on tomatoes, you could strip off every single leaf and just leave about 4 inches at the top and plant it. And then what it does is that they will root out at all those areas will root out, so you have a lot stronger root system. So anyway, tomatoes is the one you don't have to plant at the levels, but pretty much everything else you do. I'm going to get to you just 1 minute, because I'm at the age where I lose my thought and then I can't get back to it. These vegetables haven't helped that. Okay, so was that did that answer? Was that the end of your question that we were talking about? Okay. Oh, but I was going to tell you about lettuce. It will not germinate above about 68 degrees. So in the summertime, although it is hard to when it's really hot, it is hard to have lettuce. But if you want lettuce all the time, you have to plant about every 2 to 3 weeks. And it's really manageable, but I still always start my plants inside, because, I don't know, then you don't have to worry about, little bugs that destroy a little tiny plant. And when you transplant, so you always transplant with water, and I use fish emulsion. Like Johnny sells fish emulsion. I don't know who else. Do you guys sell fish emulsion? I don't. Do you?
We sell a fish something. My husband would know.
Okay.
What is it?
But fish emulsion, it's just a really good plant nutrient source that for every transplant I put in the garden, I have a 5-gallon bucket that I mix up a fish emulsion, and I'll put like a couple cups in there in my hole. or whatever. But if it's lettuce, it's not going to be a couple cups. It'll be less than that. But I mean, yeah, the native people, remember how they would put the fish in and plant their corn? But they always said, I mean, fish just has a lot of good nutrients in it.
When you
in
say
planting.
composting, you're mixing the fish emulsion with soil?
No. Oh, I'm sorry. It's liquid. It's liquid. I'm sorry. And I just in my 5-gallon bucket, it's just all liquid, mixed down to what the transplanting ratio is. Okay. What was your question now? Do you remember?
Yes, that might be a challenge. No, it was back to the cattle panels.
Yeah.
In addition to cucumbers, I grew my green beans up the.
Oh, if they're pole beans.
Yes, they were.
If they're pole
and
beans.
they were just so easy.
Where the cows run.
Okay.
Anyway, so we panel off our whole garden with cow panels. And then around the bottom, then we put chicken wire.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And put that on, so then you don't have the chickens or rabbits or anything
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
And that works
Yep.
pretty well.
Yep. I actually do have chicken wire on my bottom of my garden because they were still getting in on some of those, you know, even a hole this big, they can sometimes still squeeze in.
Yeah.
So I do. You're right. I do have chicken wire. I failed to mention that. Okay. So let's just go through a few of these onions. So onions, the size of your onion, the bulb, the size of the actual onion, is going to be dependent on how early you get it in because it's all dependent on the length of sun you have in your days. So you know, our greatest sun goes up to like June 20th. Then our days start getting shorter. So the longest day of the year is like June 20th for sun. So. And I always use Faulkner's onion plants that have green on them. It's just they're usually not as spicy of an onion, and it's, you know, they just already have a lot of input in them. You can use just the dry onion sets too, but and then plus like the Walla Wallas, if you want, you can absolutely grow beautiful Walla Wallas if you keep them watered. But onions can go in, like they can handle 25 degrees easily. So you can get them in, I don't know, I put the date on there. But when you're putting them in, when they already have the green on them, when you're actually using the actual plants, you have to keep them watered all the time because if they dry out, you'll lose them. But as long as you keep them watered until you see that their own green starting to come through, then you're good. But if you want, you know, onions that aren't hot, you have to keep them watered anyway. So, and onions are one thing I heavily mulch with grass, just for weeding, if no other purpose, just so I'm not constantly out there weeding. I talked about the peppers. If anybody wants to talk with me later, maybe I can, unless there's a lot of interest, I can tell you about starting the plants. And like I just have shelving I got from Menards, wire shelving, and I use shop lights that have little hooks on them because when I start my plants, I always want my light sources to be about 2 inches away from the actual thing, and then I move it up as they move up. And I know some people can manage to do it through a windowsill, but if you do, you constantly have plants that are leaning. And so sometimes you get these spindly plants. So, and then you have to turn them and all that. But if you just do like a shop light, get creative. Maybe you could even do it under your kitchen cupboard if you could hang a shop light. Put some little hooks there and hang a shop light there if you want to use your kitchen cupboard. I don't know. But depending on how many you're doing, I do pans. I have quite a few pans of them, so quite a few trays of them.
Do you have anything sweet potatoes as far as?
You can do sweet potatoes. I tried them one year, but I think my issue, I had problems with them just because they had some scab on them. But I have problems with my potatoes with scab too, so I think I got something into my soil at one time that is causing me, and that's the other thing, don't ever compost. Like if you have a tomato plant that has some kind of a blight or some kind of thing, don't compost it. Please just throw it in the garbage because you can add that, and now you might have a problem for years. Because that's what I think I did with my potato thing, is I composted something that shouldn't have been, that had something on it, and then I spread it. So I know sweet potatoes, you can do them.
I heard that if you could plant them in like a tub or something,
Mm-hmm.
and then just keep everything in there, and then you can get some pretty nice sized potatoes. I'm gonna try it.
Try it. Try
And
it.
then I heard there's another thing for seeds
Mm-hmm.
that you can go online, and it's called Baker's Creek.
Yep.
Have you heard of that?
Yep. I just haven't ordered from them, but I have heard of them. Yeah. There are lots of seed companies. Like right now I know.
They don't have any shipping or anything.
Oh, okay. Okay.
for them.
I mean, this is why it's so nice to have Faulkners, and they have a whole set right now. Although sometimes you can't, like for me, there are some specific things that I always, that I just have learned to like, so then I order. But especially if you want to start any seeds, and they also have an entire heirloom area. If you're looking for seeds that are good quality, and the thing about heirloom is some heirlooms can be a little bit prone to some disease, but they're almost always your very best tasting vegetables. So, something else I was just going to say about that. Oh, I don't know. Maybe it'll come back. Go ahead.
My question had to do with like GMOs.
Yeah.
And stuff. Would heirlooms be considered like non-hybridized?
Oh yeah, no GMOs in heirlooms.
Okay.
They're just things that were passed on from generation to generation. They've never been touched, or they can't be heirloom.
I've never gardened before, but we have a daughter that's very intolerant to anything that's been genetically modified.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what to look for on a seed packet.
They'll say non-GMO.
Really? Okay.
And I don't know how they do it, but Johnny's doesn't carry anything GMO.
Okay.
So, and you can.
As far as I know, we don't either.
Okay.
Like our seed suppliers.
Yep.
We don't like the, genetically modified corn that you can
Yep.
poison on in the corn.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Yeah. Yep.
So we
Yep.
just tell people to look it up on the internet.
Yep.
To buy it there, 'cause we don't really like them. As far as I know, we don't sell anything.
Okay. Great. I'm just going to see if there's, tomatoes. I don't know if you've all grown tomatoes and you use an indeterminate variety. So there's determinates and indeterminates. Determinates is there's a determined size that they get, and typically their fruit will all get ripe at the same time. I usually grow indeterminates, but the thing about indeterminates is that they can grow, 6 feet tall. So I encourage you, if you, I've got so many tomato cages that are bent and broken, and you've tried everything. Well, this is the thing that works, and it works for me. And it's what they call the Texas. Where's my tomato one? Oh no, Florida. Sorry, Florida weave for tomatoes. If you go on YouTube, and all it simply is, it's so simple. It just works so well. Again, T-posts. So I can't live without T-posts. So you put a T-post in, and then I think my T-posts are 4 feet apart. And then I put 2 tomato plants in the middle of that. When they get to be about 12 to 15 inches high, my boys will take twine, try to get biodegradable if you can, and they'll go around the T-post, and then they'll go all the way past those 2 plants, go around, circle around this T-post, and then keep going, circle around it, and then come back the other direction. And then we do that about every 8 inches, all the way up. And it absolutely is wonderful. You can, your tomatoes, they just stay there. They just stay. And
you don't wrap it around the plant.
No, not around the plant, but you have to wrap it around every pole, because otherwise they'll get too loose, and then they won't hold. So around every T-post, and then you come back on the other side, so that there's like these strings that go up about a foot or so on each side of the plant. Anyway, it works great. I was so excited when I finally discovered that, because I was so sick of plants on the ground.
So if I Google that.
Yep, Florida weave. But it's simply T-posts and twine. That's all it is. Okay, the winter squash, I just want to give a plug for my favorite winter squash. Okay, so summer squash is like zucchini and stuff like that. Don't plant too many of those, because you probably aren't going to eat them. But winter squash keeps. Most of it. It doesn't all keep, but some of it keeps.
I did use my last one.
Yep, some of it keeps well. So my favorite winter squash is what's called North Georgia Candy Roaster. And they're a very funny looking squash. They're almost like a Hubbard. They store extremely well. And when they grow well, they grow about this big. And they're like a banana that's about this long. That's the shape that they grow in. And it is I think the sweetest, the best. To me, it's the best winter squash that's out there. But what I really love about it is that it keeps. It keeps. Now be sure though, when you get to the harvest time, because we're not really talking about harvest today, but be sure you research how to harvest stuff. Because if you don't harvest it and prepare it for storage properly, it's not going to store for you. And like squash, you have to get all the dirt off of it. And you don't break the stems. You don't break the stems off, because anytime you're leaving any opportunity for bacteria to get in, it's going to be ruined. So be sure that when you're harvesting, and especially for storage, that you that you read up on what you're doing. When I do my carrots, I don't know if I read up on this or not, but like I just take my picnic table and I put them in big tubs, and then I just run water in my tubs. I cut off all the green and get all the dirt off. You can buy carrot gloves, which I highly recommend because you know how good it feels to get carrot slivers under your nails. But buy these carrot gloves, and it just scrubs them as you're in your thing, just kind of scrubbing them around. I get all the dirt off of them. Then I lay them out on towels and just towel dry them and package them, and they will store all winter like that. But again, you have to have the dirt off and you have to have the green off. But you just kind of, so I wasn't going to go into storage, but you need to know that a little bit about
What was that squash called?
checking. Oh, North Georgia Candy Roaster.
An interesting thing on a gardening show where they were cleaning tuber type plants, potatoes, carrots, that kind of thing.
Okay.
They took a large crate with sieve holes in it,
Mhm.
plastic, and they would shake it,
Mhm.
get all the dirt clods off as much as they could, and then they would run their hose, shake it, run the hose, and it worked really well, I thought, instead of getting your hands all
Yeah.
full of mud.
Yeah.
That's gardening.
Yep.
This girl doesn't like to.
Yeah, and then the other thing I didn't mention, and I don't know I don't know if there's controversy about black plastic. I used to use it around a lot of my stuff before I started mulching with other things, because black plastic is a mulch too. But I will, so I just don't know if it leaches anything or not. But I will use black plastic. I mean, this is an idea you can use for your for all those vine plants, your watermelon, cantaloupe, squash, cucumbers, to get your soil to heat up. If you just put your black plastic on your soil, just put some big rocks on it or some sandbags or something like that, it really makes a huge difference in heating your soil up fast. So that's a thought. I mean, and black fabric would do the same thing, but plastic is kind of nice because you can just roll it up and reuse it again for the next year. I don't know what time we're on, but should I just see if there's any more questions or?
I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you involve your kids.
Oh my.
How that works. You seem like the brains.
Yeah.
How do you delegate?
Yeah.
How do you get everybody to work together?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, I suppose we all just have our own thing, but beans are one thing we all hate to pick if you have too many rows of beans because they're kind of hard to pick. So everybody at our house has their section of beans. So they know they have section 1, section 2, section 3. And so then you also can hold them accountable. I mean, so you say, okay, beans always have to be picked every other day when they're producing. So that's one thing we do is everybody has their bean row, and you know whose area it is, so you can hold them accountable if they're not doing a very good job. So I homeschool my children, so all of them are required to know how to start seeds and to plant the garden for 1 year entirely on their own. Obviously, I give them advice and stuff, or I tell them where I want things. But that is one thing I have used. So they get a gardening credit, but they have to know absolutely from start to storage what to do. But they know a lot just because we garden together. And I think gardening is great fun, but a lot of times we'll just take our speakers out and put a podcast on or something and listen to something. Although honestly, with mulching, I'm not out in the garden weeding very much. I usually don't ever send kids out to do stuff just alone, because it's not fun to work alone a lot of times. I mean, sometimes I like to have alone time because I never get it, but so that's not all bad. But it's just fun to work together, and you don't have to have something that you're listening to, because it's also a great time if you have kids that are at all talkative, which they will be if they have time alone with you, that you're out in the gardening and you're out gardening and they just all of a sudden start telling you what's on their heart. So yeah, gardening is oh my goodness. It's a great part of life. It really is.
I rotate my garden every year.
Oh yes.
I was just wondering
yes.
if that's something.
So that's why if you use it. So I do in my little notebook here where I have all my pictures and stuff. I also keep a picture of my garden from every year.
I have
Yeah. Yeah, because you should not.
Picture, but I have my floor plan from one time.
Yep. You should not plant the same thing in the same spot more than every third year you can plant it, but never 2 years in a row. And some things like tomatoes and peppers shouldn't be planted in each other's spaces. Things that have the similar pests, so tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant would be similar. Things that have similar, diseases, you also rotate those things out too. So rotating is important. It really is important. So think about how you're planting, and if you're really technical about it, which like I'm not, he told you that from the beginning, it's good to plant certain things where other things were planted because like they have higher nitrogen and it's a higher nitrogen using vegetable. But if you're one of those people that gets really technical, go for it. But I just know that just the way God designed our earth and seeds, that if you just do the basic things, you'll have vegetables, and you'll have good produce. So yes.
Question on the mulch. I think is this just stuff you buy like in the bags at the store, or you grind up your own? Or?
Do you mean like for the wood chips?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chips.
No, I do not buy it. ABC? Seems like ABC. I don't know. I had to look it up online. So like the guys that do tree work, the guys that cut trees down and then they chop it up. The ideal mulch to start with for wood chips is never decorative. That's because you should always have some green in it. So the ideal mulch is if you can find Bollingers. Bollingers is, that's sometimes I go to Bollingers and get a pickup load in Mandan. It's like $40 a pickup load. I think it's 40, and they'll load it up for you. But you have to call ahead, and they're only there like from 4:30 to 5:15 or something like that. So you have to call ahead, but it's worth it to me. But ideally, it'll have some green in it. So it's just trees that they've taken down or limbs that they've taken down that have some green in them. So when you look at it, it's green and brown and white all chopped up together.
The landfill's got dirt cheap shredded wood too.
They don't load it. They charge you to load it.
They do charge you.
I'm pretty sure, almost, yeah.
You take your own pitchfork or shovel and get it.
Yep, if you do it yourself, yep. I don't know, I never have. I don't know, trees aren't, like I said, they're not usually heavily sprayed and stuff like that. I don't know. Yep.
So on that, I think it's called arborist wood mulch, is what kind of people refer to that as. I got into it last year, with arborist wood mulch, mulched everything in. But the only way I could find I could actually keep any kind of soil retention in my above ground gardens that I put in, because I didn't want to, I felt like working in my backyard because of how the property was laid out, they didn't bring any topsoil in. But anyways, I have a question on how to maintain that. So like, how do you amend it? How do you bring manure in like the following year when you have everything already all mulched in, or don't you do that anymore? Okay, so I do have wood mulch in my garden, but I really only use it for my rows. I really use it between my rows. Between your rows. Between my rows. So what you're keeping everything covered because you have to walk somewhere, right? And you have to be able to kneel down and work. So it's between my rows, but really close to my plants. I like to use grass mulch because and wood is more.
Doesn't decompose as quickly.
Yeah, no, it definitely doesn't decompose as quickly. But there's a pH issue a little bit with some.
Is it acidic?
I don't know if it's. I don't know. But so I would and never till it in. Never till it in. Yeah. No, that you definitely change your soil pH. So you definitely don't till it in. So
Do you amend your soil every year? Do you bring?
Oh yeah. So then what I do.
Every year in the areas where you grow it?
Yes. So what I do is like I'll just take a wheelbarrow and I'll put in my manure, and then the other thing that I have written that I put on here. Where did I put it on? I saw it. On the back, under all the vegetables, under the watermelon and winter squash and stuff, most of our soil is depleted of trace minerals, okay, which is a big deal for our health. And so I have started to mix Redmond Mineral Conditioner, which you can get online. If any of you order from Azure Standard, they carry it. And Redmond Animal Salt, which seems like a funny thing, but the Redmond Animal Salt has all the minerals in it. So I've read that you could actually just even apply that to your soil and it wouldn't hurt it. But I don't do that. I mix it at a 60-40 proportion. And it's only like a teaspoon per linear foot. And I put on here that's like, like 200 pounds per acre. So I never get too caught up in it as long as I'm not pouring it on there. I'll just put it in with my manure, or sometimes I'll just come and sprinkle it on the top. And then so what I do is I have to lift my water lines up, just and move them over a little bit, and then I'll just come through and I will take just a scratcher or a hoe and I'll do a tiny bit of cultivating with my soil amendments on there and with my manure and just work it in. But then you're only, and see then you're only working it into that area. You just have that 1 foot on the row and you don't have all this space between your rows that you would be using 3 times the amount of manure, 3 times the amount of everything. And then, I mean, that other soil, if you ever wanted to use it though under the wood chips, it'll be beautiful soil. Because as it decomposes, and so then every year you have to add to it. You have to add, because it will decompose your wood chips, and then you have to add to it. And I just try to keep it 3 or 4 inches, because I know that people have said if they get higher than that, like the thawing is an issue. But like right now, I have to go out and move it all away from my rows because the wind will have blown it in and stuff. Move it away so that I have a good foot where all my rows are. Anyway. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any suggestions for fruit like strawberries, raspberries, apples? We've been talking a lot about vegetables.
Yeah. Okay, so I have an incredible strawberry patch and an incredible raspberry patch. And the one thing I would say about either of those is that, so raspberries are, they won't produce the first year. They'll produce the second year. But you have to take out all the old canes that are woody. And then they will shoot up, new stuff. You got to just read up on it. But the one thing that I do is remember those are perennial beds. So I personally wouldn't just newly till an area and plant this year and something like that, because it's so difficult to weed them and you can't go in there and till and stuff. So I would make sure that I prepared it, that I had really good manure in it. And the other thing, especially for raspberries, is I have my boys go up into the tree rows and collect pails of evergreen pine needles, because raspberries especially like acidic soil. And so that it has worked really well for me. Strawberry beds, though, too, I would put some in the strawberry beds. They're a little acidic as well.
Are they the dried ones?
Yeah, just the dried ones. Yep, just the dried pine needles. So, see, pine needles are a great source. I mean, like in nature, they're a source of mulch, but they're acidic. So you can't just put them on everything. But on raspberries, especially, and strawberries, definitely.
What else?
Blueberries, but I don't know if you can grow blueberries here very well. But those are the main things that I use them for. Those are the only things I use them for. And if you're doing like strawberries, again, I did order a bunch of strawberry plants from Johnny's and started them. I ordered the ones that were for North Dakota, or for our zone. And then at the end of the year, just follow the instructions. I completely mow them down, and you can add fertilizer, in between. You just kind of are doing it by hand. Some people cover theirs in the winter time, but the thing about covering them, if you're not, like I cover them with straw and stuff, but if you're not careful about certain straws or hays that you bring in, you're going to bring in tons of weeds. So one year I tried doing mulch with, I can't remember if it was straw or hay, but I brought in so many weeds, I learned not doing that one again. So, yep.
I have 2 questions for you. Have you ever tried growing artichokes?
I haven't.
Has anyone?
Okra grows.
Artichoke?
This is our first year we're going to sell them in gallon bags, but someone told us you have to grow them, so we're trying it.
Well, it winter over. We had grown them 2 times, but the first time we dug them up, this year we didn't, and we don't know if they'll.
I think the ones we're growing you don't, but there is one called Jerusalem artichokes that they grow like in Missouri and stuff. So
yeah.
So they might be different.
And what do you think about fertilizers like Miracle Grow?
Nope, I wouldn't use them.
Okay.
They're not natural. I wouldn't use them.
Not even the organic Miracle Grow?
I don't think so. Anytime you can apply, like I said, like compost or the manure, it's just it's what God has provided for us. Use it. It's out there. Use it. And then you get bulk too. You're not just, things aren't just running. Yep.
With strawberries, I can't remember which one of my strawberries are younger than the other ones.
Oh yeah. I can't remember them either.
So do you do anything to help?
The one thing with strawberries that I have done that has been very effective is I replant every 3 years. Okay, so I totally changed my space, but you got to change it a year ahead of time if you want to have strawberries, for the next year. But so then I will take the runners that are on the outside, because those are your newer plants. That's the only thing I can say. But if you replant every 3 years, because sometimes your berries will get smaller and smaller and smaller. But if you do it every 3 years, you have good. And once you start them, you'll have them forever, because they don't die. And I never cover mine. If you had a super, super cold winter with no snow, you could lose them, but I don't know, I've never lost them. But I do use strawberries that are for this zone, and that's important.
What about with raspberries? You don't replant those every year?
Oh no, and once you start raspberries, they have so many shoots that you'll be able to share them with the whole world. So the thing about raspberries is that they spread. But that's okay.
More fertilizer or something, because they don't produce very well.
And you do have to cut out the old canes every year. My husband used to think that you had to just cut them all down, so he was cutting them all down every year, and we never got any raspberries. Finally, I said, could read about it. just the old canes get cut out, because then the new ones.
I think I need some better soil where I have it right now.
And I'd get some acid on it, like those pine needles. Manure and pine needles, just work them in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Use coffee grounds ever?
I throw them in my compost all the time. But I don't know. I haven't just used coffee grounds. And go online if you ever have, because sometimes you're going to have a bug, something that gets into your garden and you don't know what to do with it. Just go online and read, because there are so many natural things that really do work. Try so hard not to use chemicals. I mean, for me, I'd pull a plant before I'd put a chemical on it. Because that stuff, if it's made to kill, and then we're putting it inside our bodies, just think about it. Okay, I better shut up, right?
I was just going to just mention a few resources.
Yeah, that's a good book. I was looking at it.
This book is a really great one. I find I've read it through, and I kind of used the approach, but it talks about basically gardening when it counts, in terms of if you had to rely on food that you could grow, what would it be? And so he goes through this, the basic essential tools of a spade, a rake, and a hoe. Basically, with that, you could do your whole garden. And then he talks a little bit about organic fertilizer, and he's very organic in that sense. Also, one of the things he talks about in that book was how to germination test your seeds. So if anybody saved seed or had old seeds in the freezer, or however you had them, and you were going to grow them this year, you would want to know before you put them in the ground whether or not you're going to have success, and if they're still good seeds, how much germination would you be getting.
And if you do have extra seeds, stick all your seeds in a Ziploc bag and refrigerate them. They keep for years, actually. Most of them will. Yeah. So now if they're pelleted, I used to do a freezer until I talked to somebody else that said you really should have them in the fridge, so I switched them. But so I just took somebody's word for it, I think. But if they're pelleted, if they have any coating on them, they won't last, just so you know, just realize that. And the way our economy is right now, and shortage of seeds and stuff, I always try to keep my entire garden in my refrigerator for the next year. I think it's a wise thing to do. So, and also when you're getting seeds, if you go to Faulkner's and instead of getting the 1/8 ounce, get the 1/4 ounce or get the 1/2 ounce. Save it for next year.
Yeah. So here's an example of some cucumber seeds that Nicole sprouted. These are a little overdone, but at least by having them, what we'll do, if you want. Nicole is actually going to hand out some samples, just some garden stuff that we preserved.
We just have some pickles for you to try, and then just a salsa I made in the kitchen. So I'm going to hand it out while he does this.
I'm just going to demonstrate what we're going to do here with what's called a germination test. So taking a simple sandwich bag, so just a little bit to trap the humidity, and then one individual piece of paper towel. Then we can take a seed. So I'm just going to take this, I'm going to wet the paper towel, maybe wring it out a little bit, and then lay it out on the table in a way that I can plant the seeds on the paper towel, and then we'll put it in a warm place. So if you guys want to get your hands on some of this and just help us use up some of these old seeds, thanks to Hannah at Faulkner's for donating them. If you wanted to get an exact rate, you could do exactly 10 seeds per paper towel. But what we would do is we would take it like that, sandwich it between the layers of paper towel, put it in a Ziploc bag, and then set it in a warm place. So we were doing this one winter near the wood stove. You have just a place where your air register comes up and it's warm, or you have a spot in the kitchen or whatever. Doing that, just sealing it up, maybe leaving a little bit of airflow, but just the plastic is going to act like a tent to keep it from drying out, and those seeds will germinate, and you'll be able to tell how many of your seeds are going to germinate. So like this example here, there was old seeds that we sprouted, and there's 3 out of 10 that didn't sprout. So that means that if we're going to plant cucumbers, and we want to do a row of them, we're going to add a few more in the row. Let's say add 30% more, and then when they come up, we'll prune off and take out some of those that are not growing. So yeah, if you wanted to do a little germination test of these seeds, feel free to come up, or when we're talking afterward, you can just play around with that. You don't have to either. So it is 2:30.
Okay.
I have a lot of questions. I'm sure everybody is probably kind of thinking about how you want to apply it. The resources that we found, Johnny's is a great source for all of that learning. There's the growing information, and then books and resources online. Nicole actually has been listening to a podcast from the lady that put out that flyer with the number of seeds to plant per person in your family, and that's the Prairie Homesteader. So if you're on Instagram or on social media or Facebook, you can find her website and her podcast and listen to that. She's done a few podcast seasons on all things growing, and she's in Wyoming, so she's dealing with some northern climate type stuff, so a lot of relevant things that you can just expand your knowledge. I just wanted to say thank you to Lisa, and why don't we just give her a round of applause.
You're welcome.
You are dismissed, and you're welcome to hang around, ask questions, think about things, but I don't want to keep people longer than they want.
I want to say one more thing I didn't mention, but when I start my seeds inside and I put them, in the black trays, like I said, be sure you keep the covers on them so they stay moist. But think of how you can keep your costs down, because it's expensive to invest in all equipment and stuff, but I just go to the thrift stores and find old heating pads, and I set them underneath my trays, and then I just stick them, because if you look at the germination, the best germination temperatures, like right now my peppers, they should be between 80 and 90 degrees, and so I just stick my little thermometer in there, and I decide, am I gonna keep it on low, on medium, or on high, and I just keep those under there, because usually the germination temperature is higher, and then the growing temperature is usually more just around room temperature. So I germinate them, get them started, then I move them to under my lights. And that's the other thing. You don't have to have your lights for the first, week or 2, depending on what you're growing, because they won't be up by then. But just think about things, because you can buy heat mats that are expensive, but I just use heating pads and they work great. So just little things like that.
One last thought too. I know Faulkner's was going to open especially for members of this class today, which is early. They're normally open April 1st. But if you wanted to get in and get some seeds to start, like you mentioned, some things should be started.
Like peppers, celery, tomatoes, any flowers, all those should be started now.
Yeah, so their store is
You're not too late,
Mandan,
so you can still start them.
It will be open from 3 to 4 this afternoon. So take advantage of it, and you won't have to wait for 3 to 4 weeks of shipping delays if you try to.
Because I called Johnny's to ask them what's going on with them. They said you probably won't get seeds for 3 to 4 weeks, just with all the shipping and everything that's going on right now. So if you want to get some things started, especially. Exactly, if you can even get them. A few months ago, they wouldn't even sell to home growers except for 2 days of the week. Anyway, there's a big issue going on with seeds. So.